Excellent. Okay, and I'm good with that. You are live.
Hi. He said the only other way to do it is make him co-host, and that would mean he wouldn't be, and we'd have no control, so he's good. So Casey was gonna try to do he was gonna do his charts and everything, but what we had to do was make him a presenter, and there's no way to make him a presenter in the program that we're in. So he's just
backwards, as my father would say.
You are
It's a
unmuted.
mirror.
It is. Yes, your video
I'm a
is mirrored. Yes.
Backwards. That's very confusing.
I worked in a mirror for 28 years. When you're
yeah.
holding a mirror and you're working in a mirror, so I actually am very good in a mouse in a mirror.
Did
Doing
you,
my hair in a mirror is another thing. That's different. Yeah.
When did I miss something isn't it generally an executive summary and Park Hangout, there's a already in these guys?
there's
Or
a
am I missing it?
management summary in there.
It-
It's in there.
In the front or the back?
Mm.
It's actually a separate sheet.
Oh, maybe that's why I didn't see it.
No, have it? It should be a separate. Is it on
No,
there?
there it is.
Any pieces of paper.
Tim, this is from you.
Yeah. Or toss. How else?
I
Just
haven't
running
heard-
late.
Okay.
It'll be here in a few minutes.
Here he is.
Call the meeting to order. Would you please stand and salute the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of April 21st, our last meeting. I thought they were good.
I make the motion to approve the minutes from the April 21st meeting as written.
I'll second. Okay. Motion by Chris, second by Mike to approve the minutes of April 21st. All those in favor? And you are
Opposed.
opposed. Okay. Next on the agenda are department reports. I think I see some guys there. Let's see, Kevin, you want to go? Mr. Bahara?
Hello, good evening. I'll start off first with the drug take back. That was on April 24th. We collected 50 pounds of drugs that day. They did not send a total for the state, so I didn't actually have that, but we did fill it was about a box and a quarter is what it was, and it ended up being 50 pounds. The officers have completed all their BLS training, which is sexual harassment, fire extinguisher, and one other I can think of. The monthly, did you get that? For the month of March?
Yes, we did. I did.
Oh, so with that, we had 138 calls to service. 142 motor vehicle stops with 6 criminal summonses, as you can see, 1 operating a suspension, a warrant arrest, and 5 of the criminal speeds. And that was 86, 90, and 96, and a 55, and then also a 63 and a 25. In case you haven't heard, we did have a standoff last week on Friday. The officers did the correct thing, calling in the state police tag team. I'd like to thank Monmouth Fire for closing off the roads, Litchfield Fire for closing off the roads, Winthrop Police Department for helping us out, and also the state tag team for negotiating a peaceful exit. Are there any questions?
It's not. All set. You all set? Thank you.
All set.
Dan Roy, Mr. Chief.
You can call me Mr. Roy. I don't mind. So good evening, everybody. I'll start out. We had our blood drive with the American Red Cross last Thursday. We ended up with 36 people that
You just
I see
muted,
you.
you muted yourself, I think.
You're muted, Dan. There you go.
I think somebody muted me. Somebody's playing with me. Probably Dennis. So I was just saying how successful the blood drive was and that we had 36 people donate blood. So thanks to everybody that came out. I see Luke Bushy's on this conference call or Zoom. I just want to thank him. He donated 5 hours of his time that day to help out with the administration table, checking people in, checking temperatures, all that fun stuff. So that was greatly appreciated. Recent calls included, as Chief Mulheron said, we assisted with that 3-hour standoff. So we had several members out there closing off the roadway. Made for a long day, but glad it was a good outcome. And one other notable call was we had a kitchen fire over in Phil's Variety the other day, and fortunately it just was contained to the oven, so it wasn't too bad. They just had to clean up from some extinguisher powder and get the kitchen back in order. So hopefully they're back to business here soon. I want to thank everybody that came out last Saturday and ordered to-go dinners, chicken to-go dinners through our auxiliary. We ended up selling, I think, about 150 dinners. So that was a good, successful event. And I believe we had about 16 meals that were donated throughout the town that we delivered. So the funds from that event, again, were donated by the auxiliary to our 9/11 fund that we're raising money for our 9/11 memorial. So we greatly appreciate everybody that turned out and bought chicken dinners. Hopefully you guys enjoyed them. Speaking of the 9/11 Memorial Fund, we've started our fundraising campaign with a GoFundMe account, and we're also soliciting donations directly to the fire department. So if you don't want to click on the GoFundMe, you can send checks directly to the Monmouth Fire Department. It'd be greatly appreciated. We're going to have several months of raising funds to pay for that memorial. So we'll be doing that throughout the summer. This Saturday, we're going to be sending a fire truck down to Yarmouth. We do this every year with the Firefighter 1 and 2 program. This year, Jessica Gray from our department's participating in that 5.5 month program. It's about 200 hours of training. And this Saturday is our turn to send a truck down to assist with an 8-hour training. So we'll have one truck out of town this Saturday. The 2 damaged overhead door panels for the center station were repaired today by Bob's Overhead Door Service. So if you drive by the station, you'll see 2 very clean door panels. So they don't quite match the other dirty white panel doors, or they're all dinged up with marks from people backing into the door, but at least the door is operable again. And the last thing I have is just want to announce that Pat Smith, or Harold Smith, is going to be stepping down as our assistant chief here in the next couple of months, effective July 1st. Pat's been with us as a chief officer for about 20 years. So I publicly thank him for his 2 decades of service as a chief officer. Even though he's got 52 years on the department, he's still going to stay active with us as a support member. So he's still going to stay on the rolls as a firefighter. So I appreciate him doing that. And I just want to thank him again for his dedicated service. And we'll be doing oral boards here in a couple of weeks to fill his position. Again, will be effective July 1st. So that's all I got, unless there's any questions for me. Okay, thank you.
Linda?
I have nothing to report tonight, just wanted to get some feedback from the board. I had sent you a survey. We've been talking about doing a survey of the residents to see what was important to them. Things like the community center, paving Cressy Road, things like that. I sent you the list. Haven't had a lot of feedback. Talked to Doug today, who's good with the list. Just want to make sure that everyone, I didn't leave anything off or.
I haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Okay, if you could try to look at it within the next few days,
Yep.
let me know. We are going to do an online survey. I've been checking with some other people who've done municipal surveys to make sure that we can do something where there aren't duplicates that skew the results. And we'll find a way so that people who don't have access to a computer or the internet will still be able to participate. And we'll put the information out there. But once we get the questions finalized, we'll design the survey. Then we'll start putting some information out on Facebook. I think that will help us as we're putting together the capital improvement plan over the next 10, 20 years. The department heads and division heads and I met last week, and we have quite a list put together. We're going to get back together and try to prioritize that. They're going to put them in want, need, and convenience order so that there's some order to them that makes some sense to everyone. I mean, some things are just going to come out of the operating budget and they have to happen, but then there is some big stuff on there. But it'll help when we get some feedback, I think, from the residents to know where we want to go. The only other thing was I had sent out what I was calling a white paper on the middle school questions 32 and 33. I had just wanted to start the discussion. I see that Tim has passed around tonight his version of what he would suggest we put up there. And if everyone wants to take a look at this over the next couple of days, let me know if you're good with this, then this is what we'll post up on the webpage with all the other documents for the election.
I actually thought I would read that in a minute and talk to the board about it. So the survey, we had talked about possibly having that available at the polls. Is that going to be possible?
Well, I thought about doing it at the polls, but then you're only getting a select group of people, and the turnout for this election is not expected to be as big as other elections. So I'm afraid we're just going to get a certain number of people, but we're going to miss a lot of other people out in the community. And I don't want to have a duplicate of answers from someone who voted and then also went online. So we thought, do it online and then make other people aware that they can get a copy of it from us if they don't have
So
access.
you'll
to
hand
it.
that out, because there are a lot of people that are going to vote that don't go online. So if you do nothing but put out a flyer that says we have a survey available at the town office for this, if you're interested, please come back and one out.
No, we'll send it to them.
Or send it to
We
them.
can send it
Whatever.
to
Yeah,
them.
okay.
Yeah.
Something for the people that don't go online,
Yeah.
which there are a lot of people that vote
Right,
that don't.
right, exactly. And then there are a lot of people who don't vote
That
who are
do.
online.
Yeah.
So we want to try to get them. The only other way to do it, if we did a hybrid, is have people put their names on them, and people are not going to want to do
Yeah,
that. So we want to be able to have people stay anonymous.
Is there, just throwing out there, is there a way that it could be mailed to each address, and the surveys would, even though they wouldn't have names on them, but they would be numbered so that we'd be able to say we've got back 1 through 50 or whatever, and then you know when they came in, if somebody checked off there wasn't a duplicate or somebody photocopied it. That way, every person that, you know, is either, you know, on the voting rolls or whatever in town gets a survey, or each address, or, you know, I am not sure how it could happen, but if it was able to be mailed and numbered so that as they came back and tallied the number, okay, we got this back and we're not getting duplicates, you know.
We've
that-
actually done mailers in the past. I think it's about $1,200 to mail every address in town. And quite frankly, I have no problem with that. I think we would probably get, I'm guessing 300 or 400 responses if we mailed them versus maybe 200 or so if we did an online survey. So we'd get, I think we'd get a bigger cross section of what
Yeah.
people feel is important. Just, it's up to us to decide if we're gonna spend that money.
Yeah, and I, you know, whether or not they wanted to mail it or drop it in the mailbox in front. I mean, that way if they were in town and wanted to drop it off, they could drop it off as opposed to spending 55 cents or whatever if they didn't want to post it.
I think,
So-
so a couple things we were thinking is try to keep it as cost efficient, if
Yeah.
not free,
Yeah,
as possible. Also being able to tally the results.
yeah,
Whereas if we use a survey online, it will do it for us. To make it a little bit easier. If we mail it to everyone, I think we would have to mail it to occupant because then you've got a lot of renters.
exactly,
And you want to, you don't want to send it to just property owners because you want to get the
Yes.
renters.
yes,
But then them getting them back, are they going to expect us to give them a return envelope to get it back to us? Because a lot of people won't be bringing it to the town office, so
yes,
a
yeah,
lot of things to consider.
yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there just because I know that a lot of people that we want to get their input wouldn't be able to do a survey online. And
So-
that's my concern.
So I think that perhaps we could maybe meet some middle ground by not only by having an online survey and then putting a flyer out at the polls and maybe
Yeah.
advertising in the Winthrop Advertiser
Yes,
that says that this survey is available, contact the town
yeah,
office.
and that's,
Or go
If you-
online. to-
Go online, if you can't go online or choose not to go online, contact the town office and the survey can be mailed to you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that I think would maybe keep the number of canned copies at a manageable level. So you don't have to, there's a lot of work involved
Yeah.
in mailing out
yes,
Mhm.
every occupant, so. But does that sound like a reasonable
Yeah, and we
compromise?
can just put we were planning on putting a thing on the top of the online survey that says, please only complete once. We think we can
Yeah.
limit it to one IP address at a time and no duplicates.
Yeah.
But we can just put the same thing on the top of the survey that says, please only complete one survey
yeah,
and do it that way.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
Well, you really can't limit to one IP address. Because multiple people may use a friend's computer. And they'll all have the same IP address, but it'll be different people.
but there's also surveys out there that if you try to do a survey a second time
It'll
from the
tell you
same
you've already
computer,
done
it
it.
tells you you can't,
Yeah.
so,
yeah, we've been working with some
yeah,
people around the state who have done some surveys for their municipalities and they were able, there's a certain level of either Survey Monkey or Google Suite that you can limit the number of entries from one IP address.
exactly, yeah, because I've run into that before.
Okay, so we will do the hybrid and, yeah,
I
okay.
think that's a good idea.
And if anyone just wants to let me know if I missed anything on that survey, if there's anything you want me to add, let me know before we do it, and I will happily add that for you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next, our select board reports. Where do yours? I wanted to bring up an item about the middle school reuse. We're trying to develop a paper to put online. I have listened to some input from different people and took into consideration the effort and work that was done by the reuse committee. And I've compiled this one-page paper here. I want to read it for everyone, including the board here. And I'd like to have further suggestions from the board if you'd like to see anything changed. Monmouth School reuse. The Monmouth School Reuse Task Force worked for over 2 years. Excuse me. Exploring the reuse of the old Monmouth School buildings. Many options were explored and information was gathered from many sources to understand the costs involved for renovation, demolition, or waiting. Business office use, co-working, renovation of all or part, community uses and benefits, safe and other, sale and other possibilities were discussed. Mainstay housing, and engineer contractors, as well as others inspected the buildings. An up-to-date engineering study was done to understand the condition of the buildings and the cost involved to renovate them. An estimate for demolition was obtained from a contractor, as well as removal costs for the oil storage tank. An architect was asked to provide an estimate for services and kindly provided concept drawings as well. To renovate the entire complex was estimated to be in excess of $8.1 million. To save the gym in the old academy building was estimated to be over $4.1 million. To save the old academy and renovate it to provide useful space for the town was estimated to be about $1.7 million. And to demolish the complex, excluding the old administration building, is estimated to be about $490,000, including oil tank removal. The committee considered and identified the following uses: a meeting hall for select board, planning board, board of appeals, fire department meetings and training, as well as other town groups. With the proper communication, computer equipment, it would be a great training and lecture space. Rental hall and event hall. The town has virtually no rentable space for events. Emergency and disaster uses. Warming and emergency food station. Additional town offices and town record storage, art display from the museum. A commercial kitchen, business incubator. No one else in the area has a commercial kitchen for rent or use. Voting, the RSU could deny us the use of the gym at any time and may do that when the pandemic is over. Economic development possibilities were also discussed. The deciding factors: it did not make sense to the committee to sell this property with its location near the fairgrounds and other town property. If the town ever wanted to acquire property for open space, a community center or other uses, it would be too expensive and might have the location advantage of this property. It was decided to put questions 32 and 33 on the ballot. Oh, crap. Excuse me, my apologies. The two final options. It was decided to put questions 32 and 33 on the ballot based on estimates for architectural, demolition, and remediation work at the site. If the voters decide to keep and renovate the 1856 portion, it can be used for the purposes outlined above. There are people who are interested in a major fundraiser to keep the amount that needs to be borrowed at a minimum. How much can be raised is unknown. If voters decide to demolish all structures, except for the former administration building, it will leave the space open to further town development for a track, a community center, green space, etc., all to be decided in the future.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any additions or deletions?
Linda, yours is the version that's posted that we have in the packet. Did you put that one together, question 32 and 33?
Yeah.
That was,
This one.
that's
is the one
solely
we did.
That's solely yours?
Well, I used some of the information she
Yeah, Tim
provided.
used some of mine at the bottom under the deciding factors and on down.
And the reason I ask, where Tim served on the board and everything else, it seems, in my mind, that's all I'm speaking to right now. There's a little bit of a conflict, and I think that anything that should be crafted should be done independently, and I think Linda doesn't have a vested interest either way on how this thing goes. So I would have some concerns with using Tim's. I also think that with some editing and some formatting, yours has more of a logical progression as to the numbers and where everything stands with it. I'm not trying to denote Tim's work on this. I'm just trying to go, there's a lot going on with this thing. And the quicker you can go through it and discern the actual facts that are going to impact your pocketbook, it just seems yours flows a little bit better. And I just take this one that, for lack of a better word, Tim, I know you served on the committee, and it's like this is your third bite at the apple. So I just don't support that document, but if the board wants to go with it, so be it.
Then we just, when Doug came into the office today, he did point out a couple of things that would need to be changed on the version that I had sent out.
Several, yeah.
When I put that middle section in with the different options that the committee had looked at, I took it right out of the minutes. And those were some of the preliminary figures, but they didn't
They're not
match
accurate
up.
anymore.
They didn't match
Right.
up to the ballot question. So if you were to use any of that section that I had sent out to you, Doug and I changed number 1 to 1.7 million because the ballot question is up to 1.7. And then the two sections about demolition would be 452,000. So I would have to change those. You don't want the voters looking at the ballot question and go, where? How did
Exactly.
they get from there to there? That's a jump.
Well, that's why I prefaced with it needs some editing.
Yeah.
That was,
And then,
Well, the actual 452,000 isn't accurate either. You have to add in oil tank removal, which is about $25,000.
this demolition fee, I thought was, with the whole structure was 400,000.
The estimate we got from the contractor was 452.
For all of the structures, right? So in this one, it says demolish all buildings, including Old Academy, 232,000.
That was an initial engineering estimate, which is no longer
So
accurate.
that's why there's some editing to do
Yeah,
here.
so to match it up to the question, the
Right.
second question on the ballot, it would be 452,000.
and I think the thing that I liked about Linda's was it looks just, with the numbering, and it gives you kind of almost like bullet points to say that these are what was considered. It's just very short and sweet to the point. It's not a lot of verbiage to run through, to sit and read. You can kind of just scan the information. And I think, for me, I wanted to have some time to kind of look at it and read it and say, okay, this, that, or the other thing. So I know we want to get it out there as quickly as possible, but I think we sent this out, was it yesterday? Monday. So.
Last Friday.
Or was it Friday?
Or Thursday. It's been a while.
We'll probably start
Whenever I
absentee
saw it,
voting
or
on
trying
Monday.
to, yeah,
So we were hoping to get
Exactly.
something posted for people who are voting absentee.
yes, so.
I like,
Wonder if we would
well, I like Tim's,
work on those.
I guess all the numbers in there, in Linda's version are like, well, they explain why.
We moved on from
We-
some of
yeah,
those options.
Some of those things
Yes.
were just discarded.
Yes,
And I just, to keep it simple, I thought that Tim's was good. I mean, as an English teacher, I could, just some capitalization and
yes,
Was never my best subject.
little stuff. Nothing was changed in any major way. Just, and I don't know, somebody reading through probably wouldn't even notice anything. But
Yeah, I follow on with what you talked about, Doug. I just, number one on Linda's version here says remove, demolish all buildings except the original academy. Doesn't say anything about renovating the buildings. And there's a $1.7 million price tag on it, so. Then, and it discusses some options that we no longer are gonna, we're not gonna be deciding. So I think that could be confusing, so
Yeah.
I agree that while there might be some grammar and punctuation edits to Tim's sheet here, I think it sticks to the relevant pieces that people are gonna be voting on. And might, tweak something here or there, but all the information is there, so. I mean, if you said, look, I'd like to see that with maybe a bullet point type of format somewhere in there, then whatever, this one needs editing too. So I think Tim's, as it's formatted, needs less editing, if any.
Do we need to vote on this?
No.
Well, just take a look at it, take a look at what I provided, Doug, and tweak it up.
Send me electronic.
I can send it to you electronically.
Then I'll change it and mess it up so that nobody would even recognize.
Is that how I got my homework back?
Any other select board reports? The only thing I'll tell people that about is, and I don't know if anybody wants to go to this, Common Watershed is having their annual budget meeting at the YMCA camp on Common Lake over in Winthrop, and it won't be on Zoom, it will have to go in person there. And if you wanted to go, you could go. And it's on Tuesday, May 18th at 6:30 p.m. And I think the next day, the 19th, is when the RSU is having their one of their public meetings on Zoom.
Actually, I do have another item that I can
Sure.
tell the board and the public about. The Kennebec County Budget Committee, we met last week. The results are for Monmouth so far, 2.4% increase, which is, I think, a little under $11,000. However, we also discussed using more from the undesignated fund balance for the county. Basically doubling it to about 300,000 from 150,000. And if that happens, and it looks like there may be enough support to do that, that would further decrease Monmouth's obligation to the county. So we may get a little closer to being flat for our county assessment.
You suggested this, right? I read that you suggested it. Or no?
Well, I supported it, I think. I think it was the budget committee member from Augusta who was very concerned about their particular assessment, which is probably going to go up even more than Richmond's. Richmond's, I think, is going up around 10%, and Augusta is going up around 12%. Because they had the biggest increase in property assessment or property valuation of all the towns. I think they gained an additional $90 million in valuation over the past year.
Anything else for select board report? Okay, on to public comment. Any public out there? No public. Okay. Next is to approve the fiscal year 19 or 20.
Fiscal year.
Fiscal year 20 budget, 2020 budget.
Audit.
Rather, yes.
In your packet, you have a copy of the audit. I've also provided you with hard copies on your tables this evening. And Casey Leonard from Brennan, Kirsten, and Willette, our auditors, is on Zoom to make a presentation. And as I noted earlier, we had hoped that Casey was going to be able to present some slides on the television for you to see, but he's not able to do that, just the way we're set up. I'll make sure I get copies of that after his presentation and send it to you all tomorrow when I'm in the office.
Oh, hey, Casey,
Hi there.
when I saw Linda today, I suggested that, or I asked if we could have the graphs and stuff that you used to give us as a supplement to all this. And she said that you were going to do it with the Zoom, but if you can't, is it possible to still be able to see those? Because they're very,
I'll send them tomorrow.
it's easier to understand for me anyway.
Yeah, we just ran into some technical difficulties in presenting it on the screen. So I'm just going to try and walk through things. But yeah, I will send the latest and greatest presentation to Linda so she can forward that to all the board members. So the audit went pretty well. This year was certainly unique, as is life these days. So the audit was entirely remote. You know, we usually do the audit on site. We're usually there for a week or so between the actual audit and the pre-audit work that we do. So this was definitely a little bit different. So again, a big thank you to Linda and her staff. There was certainly a little bit of extra work on their side to make that happen. So in terms of the opinion on the financial statements, the town received an unmodified opinion, which means they are fairly stated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or it was a clean opinion, which is what the town usually receives in terms of the opinion on its financial statements. In addition to the financial statement audit, we also performed an audit in accordance with government auditing standards. This is what we call a yellow book audit. And here we consider the town's internal controls over the financial reporting process. So we look at all the procedures that are in place that help to ensure that the year-end balances are materially correct. We also perform tests of the town's compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. And we didn't have any material weaknesses, but we did have a significant deficiency, and that's for one that we usually have, and that's for segregation of duties. So this is a comment that has been, we've reported for many, many years, and it's a comment, honestly, that most of our clients receive on a regular basis. And it really has to do with the small staff size that you have within your finance office. You know, ideally, you could take an accounting transaction and you could have different individuals involved in that process, and that provides for better segregation of duties. So there's an example in our comment about how, at least last year, the deputy finance director was involved in reconciling bank accounts. She was involved in preparing and posting journal entries, and she was involved in maintaining the general ledger. Again, in a perfect world, we could take parts of those different functions and give them to different employees, and that provides for better segregation of duties. And ultimately what it means is that there's a greater risk of fraud and there's a greater risk of errors when you don't necessarily have ideal segregation of duties. And not that either of those occurred, but there's a greater risk that they can occur. So there's generally a few things that we recommend. When you're talking about liquid assets like cash, you always want to make sure that you have good controls. And the town does have, the town generally does have good controls in that area. We also recommend that management and the board review financial information on a regular basis. And I know the board does. I mean, I've been involved in Monmouth's audit for a number of years, and I know you folks look at financial information. And I would just, the gist of this comment is just to continue with that process. I know in the coming year, it sounds like you guys are having some changes. We'll have to revisit this comment. Generally, it's hard for some of our clients to get away from this issue unless, you go out and hire 10 different people, which is certainly not what I recommend. And it's a comment that, it tends to reoccur. So beyond that, we had a few recommendations. So we had a recommendation related to journal entry review and approval. So when we're looking at the journal entry approval process this year, we noticed that the journal entries, at least for most of the year, weren't being reviewed by another individual. And so we're recommending that Linda, most likely, as the town manager, would review those journal entries if they're being, prepared by the deputy treasurer, the finance individual. And it doesn't necessarily need to be every single journal entry. We have a lot of clients who kind of use a rule of thumb of, or have a policy saying anything over $500 or anything over $1,000. And definitely anything that's not reoccurring. There's certainly many reoccurring journal entries that, especially if they're smaller amounts, like posting interest, that don't necessarily need to be reviewed on a regular basis. We also had a comment about purchasing controls. So when we were looking at cash disbursements, we noted that there were many items reviewed that had purchase orders which were prepared after the invoice had already been received. So the intent behind purchase orders is that it is supposed to show the approval of transactions before the transaction actually occurs. So if those purchase orders are being signed after the transaction's already occurred, it kind of defeats the purpose of having purchase orders. So we would just remind the town that purchase orders are really supposed to come first and then the transaction. It's supposed to show the pre-approval of a transaction. So.
Is there, excuse me a second, is there any issue with having an open PO with vendors that you use on a regular basis where there may be time sensitivity with getting parts or materials? And so you can have a PO with them that's open for a certain length of time and then do releases against that PO for certain money amounts?
Totally fine. Totally fine. Yeah, we see that quite often too. Yeah.
So for instance, a salt vendor, a fuel vendor, a parts
Yeah.
supplier, or.
Yeah, so, contractor vendors, even ongoing contracts with it, keeps reoccurring. Yeah, no, that's totally fine. And then I guess the other thing I'll go through are just the revenues and expenditures to the general fund. So in the graphs that you receive tomorrow or tonight even, I have a budget actual comparison in there for the general fund revenues and the general fund expenditures. So for revenues came in about $14,000 over budget. So you received more revenues than what you were budgeting for. So that's a good thing. Some of the larger variances here, just quickly, I'll mention these. Tax revenues are over budget by about $81,000. And that was due to the effect of the pandemic on property and excise tax collections. So your office was closed for a period of time. There was a period of time in which individuals didn't have to register their cars, and so that affected excise taxes. Pretty common with most of our clients, with what we've seen this year and the effect of the pandemic on town finances. And then intergovernmental revenues were over budget by about $43,000, and that was due to greater than expected state revenue sharing. Something as you're going through the budget process, that number can change. So sometimes it's difficult to nail down when you're actually approving the budget. As for expenditures came in about almost $1.6 million under budget. So a very significant variance. And again, I'll just mention some of the larger variances that we saw. General administration expenditures were under budget by about $115,000. And that was primarily due to lower than expected employee benefit, abatement, and school building costs. Protection expenditures were under budget by about $32,000. And that was due to lower than expected police department and dispatch costs. Public works expenditures were under budget by about $64,000. And that was primarily due to lower than expected costs related to road improvements and winter operations. And most significantly, capital expenditures were under budget by about $1.3 million. And that was due to the budgeting of capital related expenditures, which were not expended during the current year. And some of those unspent amounts have been carried forward to future periods with the intent that those projects would be completed in 2021 or in future years. Pretty common for a lot of our clients. I mean, a lot of our clients ran into issues in terms of doing some of their larger projects. There were material shortages related to the pandemic. Sometimes there were labor shortages. So a very large variance, but certainly one with a reasonable explanation of why it happened. And then the other graph that I wanted to just kind of describe is, so we do a calculation. It's called unassigned fund balance as a percentage of budget. And it's one of those ones in our industry we kind of calculate to determine if the community is financially healthy. How are they managing their fund balance? How are they kind of planning for that rainy day? And so we use this calculation, and we usually recommend 1 to 2 months worth of expenditures. Meaning if all of the revenues for the town were to stop today, how long could you continue to pay your bills? And we usually recommend 1 to 2 months worth of expenditures, 8.3 to 16.7%. And the town, in the graph that I have, it goes from 2017 to 2020. From 2017 to 2019, that percentage was right around 12%. In 2020, the town's up to about 19.6%, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. It's certainly a little higher than what we generally recommend. And Linda and I have talked about this a few times, and I certainly have had many conversations with other clients. You know, I think the next few years, with the effects of the pandemic, the long-term effects of the pandemic, I mean, we're not really sure what that's going to look like. You know, it certainly could be financially difficult on local government. So I think having a little bit of extra fund balance to kind of weather that issue or weather that time is good. And even our industry, you know, back in 2008, 2009, the Governmental Financial Officers Association and some of the rating agencies were really recommending, when the economy was bad back then, as I'm sure you all remember, you know, a lot of the rating agencies and stuff were suggesting getting over 20%. So I think being on the higher side is definitely a good thing, which is exactly where the town is right now. Is there any questions on any of those statements I just made? Yeah.
Can we identify the capital projects that have been approved, but we didn't expend the funds for? Because those were voted on by the public. I think that we need to actually do them.
Yeah, I mean, there's amounts in your carry forwards. And those are in the notes to the financial statements. Those projects are listed. And so, yes, they have, I mean, I can't name exactly how much is included in there, but I know they are in the notes to the financial statements, what's been carried forward for capital projects.
Well, can we get that information to Linda so she can provide it to the board?
Yeah, I don't have the specific financial statements, but you guys should have those as a note. There is a note in the notes to the financial statements.
Casey, I've got a quick question.
Sure.
The carry forward you're talking about in essence are that those funds are already encumbered. It's not due to we just have an excess of money because we haven't spent it on X, Y, and Z. So those funds, what you're saying, are already encumbered for those projects that.
Yes, you are correct. Yeah.
So it's not something we can carry forward and diminish the tax levy. It's already, the money's already spoken for, basically.
That is true. Yes, that is
That's
true.
exactly why I want to find out what it is we should have spent the money on and get it straightened out.
But that's not included in your undesignated fund balance amount, right?
No, it'd be considered a signed fund balance.
Right, so the undesignated fund balance, I just want to be clear on that. The undesignated fund balance of 19% is not encumbered funds.
That's correct. That is correct. That would not include anything that's been assigned. What we would call assigned, it's what we usually call, or used to call, designated fund balance. But there are amounts that have been set aside through vote or through board approval.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that question, so depending on when we borrowed the money for various projects, I can think of the Packard Gilman project, the money was approved in May by the bond bank. But we didn't get the money, we may have gotten the money closer to the end of the budget, but we didn't expend it yet. So we rolled it over at the end of the year. You would have rolled it over when we brought the rollovers to you in, well, July after the budget was passed last year. So depending on when those funds were borrowed, it may have been closer to the end of the fiscal year, but the project costs had not started up yet. But they will be spent.
Well, I for one would like to know if there's any encumbered fund balance or designated fund balance for any projects that we haven't expended yet and what it is.
The only thing I can think of at the top one I have right now that we have not expended is the savings that we had from the Packard Gilman project, which is about $137,000. And we're going to be using that. The only way we can use it, because it's main bond bank money, is to make the payment in the next fiscal year on that bond payment. That's why we're not going to calculate the mill rate using that payment for Gilman Packard, because that money is still, it's in the budget.
Well, I understand that, but I still would like to have you take a look and let us
Okay.
know if there's anything else
Okay.
that that the voters have approved that we haven't followed through on. Whether it be road reconstruction, road maintenance, a road repair that didn't get done, or whatever. I'd like to know.
So on page 30 of the financial statements is what's included in assigned fund balance.
And that should cover all of it, right?
Excuse me?
That should cover all of that's the assigned fund balance, about 660,000.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so Maple Beach
There's
and
the-
North Main
there's-
sidewalks,
339. So
Police Reserve, Public Works. All right,
that's-
yeah, that's the bulk of it, is the sidewalk project. You know, and the other ones are small things, but just wanted to make sure there wasn't a major project. That one's underway, the sidewalks are underway. Woodbury Pond Dam. Okay. I think that explains it adequately.
Were there any other questions?
No.
No, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to follow up on Casey's earlier comments. And these are carryovers from previous years on the staffing and who's doing what. So half of this audit was during Kurt's time and half of it was during my time. So some of the things that came out of the last year's audit, I was able to implement in the second part of the year. Things like signing off on all the journal entries, that was not being done. So, and if we don't have a balance, I just get a list of all of the fund, general fund, the notes anyway, from Angela, and I initial all of them. So now there's that checking and balancing there. Angela does the payroll, she does the accounts payable and accounts receivable. I sign off on all the checks. You all see the warrant every 2 weeks. Lori and I get a printout of our revenues and our expenditures so that we can watch those balances and see where everything is and keep an eye on them. We have switched bank reconciliation away from the deputy treasurer. Daniel is now doing our bank reconciliations, our CEO. So we've kind of split things up a little bit more. And as Casey says, we're a small, we're a small crew. So there's only so much that we can spread it out. But when the cash ups are done every day, there's usually 3 people involved in the cash ups. So I feel like we have a really good control system of what's going on financially.
Any other comments, questions? for Casey.
I'll move we approve the audit.
Second,
So it's a motion by Tim, second by Mike to approve the audit. All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you, Casey.
Take care.
You too. Next is to set the poll opening time for June 8th.
Oh, we do this every election. The poll closing time is standardized by state law, but the select board has to set the opening time. Traditionally, the opening time for the Monmouth polls is 8 a.m.
So moved.
Second. Okay, so motion by Tim, second by Harold to approve the opening time of 8 a.m. for the June 8th election. All those in favor? Thank you. Next is warrant number 24.
Checks over $1,000. Blue Rock Earthworks for demo removal, $2,225. $2,225. Central Main Power Electricity, which is including streetlights and a couple of buildings, $3,603.51. Dennis K. Burke Incorporated, this is for fuel, $1,473.15. Eco Main Recycling, $2,090.95. GDI Services Incorporated, this is our janitorial services, $3,050. Harris Computer Systems, this is our trio maintenance yearly agreement, $11,494.46. Main Street Property Management LLC, this is payment to Main Street Property Management for under the credit enhancement agreement, partial payment of their taxes back to them, $1,698.84. Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust for employees insurance, $20,539.29. Maine Today Media, this is advertising. This bill had been emailed to Kelly and they had stopped sending us hard copies of the bills and no one was getting the bills. We finally got them all the other day in the mail and they add up going back to last July 1st, $2,383.71. We've since corrected that, so we'll get them to the right person. Maine Waste to Energy for solid waste services, $2,063.53. Overhead Door Company, this is for the Public Works door that Keith had mentioned a few weeks ago, $4,764. Pine Tree Engineering, this is for engineering services for the Beach, Maple, and North Main Street sidewalk projects, $10,900. Purchase Power, postage and fees, $1,020.99. Regional School Unit number 2, our monthly appropriation, $430,650.65. And Treasurer State of Maine for motor vehicles, taxes, licenses, permits, $4,523.75 and $10,670.11.
When you get an e-bill, do you verify it with the vendor?
Well, we get, when they send the bill to us, they send us a copy of what the ad was, it was in the paper. So those came with them.
All right, because it's a common tactic of scammers to send e-bills now. The municipalities and different departments, a lot of times they just get forwarded and then they end up getting paid. Once you pay a bill, if you're not getting it back.
Most of our bills come hard copy still, so.
Well, it's a trend, that's why I bring it up. Most places are gonna start going paperless to save that little bit of expenditure over the course of their time of doing business. With that, I'll move we approve the warrant.
yeah, I have one question, Tim. You said this expenditure for the overhead door was the public works, so that was the transfer station, it wasn't the public works.
No, he's got another situation at the transfer station and that'll be in the next budget.
Okay. Thanks. Second,
Okay, so it's a motion by Tim, second by Harold to approve warrant number 24. All those in favor? Thank you. Next is a work session on the format of the minutes.
I would like to say that our minute taker Doreen over the years has done an absolutely outstanding job.
of conveying the mood and feel of what we discuss to the general public. Not everybody in the general public is gonna want to take and look at a recorded video. A lot of times they like to download those minutes and see what has gone on. And I think she's done an absolutely outstanding job of letting people know how we discuss things and what we feel while we're discussing it. Now, in a previous board a number of years ago, we had decided that our minutes would only be edited in public by us. And I think we need to continue that particular idea.
I agree with that. I think they should only be edited in public by us, and I think that as regarding what is actually captured on the minutes, that we don't need as much detail as Doreen's been. She's been almost a court stenographer, the way she's tried to capture every nuance and every word and so forth, and that's just asking way too much of her to do that, I think. So what I'd like to see is something more oriented towards an action type of minute format, but that goes beyond just motions and votes, that captures significant conversations within the. So in other words, the department has reports. She doesn't have to try to capture every thought or every word that the department heads give out there, but she could capture if there's something significant. One of the Chief Roy has some significant issue that he's going to be bringing up or he discusses, then she could just say, Chief Roy discussed blah. Doesn't need to capture everything he said. We just have in the minutes that it was discussed. And the same would hold true for the select board discussions. If there's, if we're discussing a particular topic, then she doesn't need to try to capture every word of the discussion, but she thinks she should capture that we discussed the topic. And if there's a specific recommendation or a specific request made of anyone, then that should be captured within the minutes, but not at the level of detail that she's been providing to us. I don't think that's necessary.
Or any consensus agreements that we come without a motion to.
Right, yeah, any significant matter that's mentioned or discussed that doesn't necessarily represent a follow with a motion or a vote. So, yeah, we have a consensus that we want to do a flyer a certain way. We vote on that, but that should be something that's just in the minutes that we did it. Had a consensus on the information going out to the voters regarding the school project. I don't think she should try to capture what it was, all the discussion, just that it happened. And maybe what the outcome was. Does that make sense?
Is there, Linda gave us a number of samples of minutes from different towns, Sabatis, Wayne, Winthrop, and Reedfield, Manchester, a lot of towns around us. And was there one that you felt was that was more appropriate than any of the others?
I'm not really concerned with what they're doing. I'm concerned more with what we're doing. So my thought is that if everyone agrees that we should orient our minutes toward that, then if Doreen wants to look through those and cherry pick what format fits her best, and I have no issue with that.
Well, with all due respect, I think we're being a little subjective to Doreen, and I think that's what Doug was trying to get. If we are trying to capture the essence of the conversation, I want to make sure we're picking something or at least making a suggestion on some of the things that take on your.
No.
Okay. So we've been covered with them. That's why I asked. It just looked like.
I know.
Sorry.
I
I didn't mean to digress, but so again, truncating those minutes, I think is important, but for her to subjectively say, okay, this is important to the board, it needs to be recorded, I don't think we're giving her a real clear message, so if we can look at some of these. Have you looked them over at all, Noreen? You have? Is there anything that captured your interest that would sort of compress these? Or-
I thought the one out for the town of Wayne was good.
Okay,
The others, I didn't like Manchester's at all.
I looked at that one in Greenfield too.
Well, then just move forward and try that,
Yeah.
and, again, I cannot emphasize enough that, whatever Doreen presents to us, comes to us, and we edit them in public, only us edit them in public.
And one of the reasons that I mentioned, capturing significant points of discussion is that on rare occasions in the past, we've had people inquire about things that the board talked about years before, or actions that the board took years before. We go back to the minutes of that period and can't find where it was ever recorded in the minutes that it was discussed. So that's why I'm encouraging that we also record significant discussion points.
But we're also working in tandem electronically too, where everything we're doing now is digitally recorded and it's able for people to get. So that's gonna be your most accurate.
But it may not be available in history, so that's why if we have a written, dual mode is always the best security process. So yes, we have the video recordings, provided we have access to media. But if we also have a printed approved minutes, then we can go back and reference them if the digital media is not available.
Well, to that point, it's not uncommon for companies, even big ones, to go belly up and delete all their content without warning. It happens. It has happened in the past, it'll happen in the future. And again, I point out that not everybody's gonna wanna sit through a recording and try to pick out all the little nuances. They're gonna wanna just download minutes, and if those minutes have those significant discussion points and the motions that were made, and kind of generally capture the essence of how we felt and what we talked about, I think that a lot of people are gonna want that. Plus, in today's freedom of information world, those can be requested. They can actually also request, believe it or not, the videos, which will be somewhat harder to deal with to provide.
And to just let you guys all know, for the whole 10 years that I've been working there, I have everything, all of these, everything, the whole backup. Thumb drive and in paper. Well, I just wanted to say, when I came here, I was not on my radar to edit minutes. It was something that Kurt told me on day one that it was my responsibility to do when they came through. And in talking to Doug over time, Doug had said that, and Kurt had said that the board had wanted briefer minutes. And then I had talked to Doug about it. So, editing the minutes is not something that I took on because I wanted to tamper with the minutes. And Doreen and I have talked many times about, cutting them back, and Doreen feels and has told me, if she doesn't want to leave out something important that was said. So, telling Doreen to make sure that she catches the gist of things, still going to put it on her to, I think she doesn't want to make a mistake. She does a great job and she wants to continue to do a great job for the town. So, I just don't want her to be in a position where she's trying to figure out, is that important? And should I put that in? Now that I know that they're on the website, I can go back. I don't know how far back will be past, but anything current, I can go back.
Well, I think we can also tell her what's important if we see something that wasn't included. And then over time, she'll get a feel for these, how we want to condense them a little bit, but what things we want to have included. I mean, there'll be a learning curve for both of us as we go forward.
So going forward, when I get the minutes from Doreen, they will just go straight to the packet.
That's, I think that's.
And to be honest with you, and I've been seated to do 2 different occasions for quite a long time now, I guess going on 12 years, and I didn't know Kurt was editing the minutes.
Yeah.
That's news to me.
Well, I'm sure he also wanted to make sure that anything that he said in the meetings was correct as well, as do I, you know.
Sure.
And-
From reading through all the minutes for those different towns, I like the Withrow meeting minutes. I mean, they're easiest for me to understand. They tell a little bit about what's going on. To authorize the manager to execute a release deed. After discussion, it was decided. Councilor Weiss updated the group and so forth. Town manager and Cobra discussed the town's response and so forth. And there's a little bit of there's more information there that for me to be able to understand what's going on, and easy to read. And I think they probably provide a person who was looking at it, an understanding of what happened. But I find like the Winthrop, the Reedfield minutes, which Dennis can tell it's about because he's a member of the select board. And but they're a little harder to understand, maybe. I don't know why. Oh. Hey, Dennis, can you hear us? Hello, you asleep?
Dennis? Can you come out?
Yes, hello. How are you?
Hey,
I'm paying full attention to you, I promise.
you are.
I am.
Oh, the select board, Reedfield Select Board minutes?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think? What did you ever think of them when you like the way they're formatted and everything?
Personally, yes, I do. I have the benefit of being at most of the meetings, so I'll remember what happened. But for the most part, I do enjoy having it listed, just what the discussion was, what the votes were, things of that nature. And it makes it you sort of get accustomed to reading how they fall along. I've never seen any other minutes besides those for a select board than the Reedfield ones that I get. So, I think it's succinct. We also, as just a side note, have a select board member take notes. Just as an additional sort of, if we talk about separating the business from the tenor of the meeting. The minutes are for the business of the meeting, and the notes that we get sort of talk about, this was a discussion that went on for a little while, et cetera, et cetera. It's not extra work. It's just the vice chair of the board usually will do that, but that's how we separate it.
You're the vice chair.
Yes, that is correct.
Having taken minutes myself on one of the boards that I've sat on, I've never written down or tried to capture, a director's report or whatever. I usually just hit the highlights of, for example, in the library, how many lens there were or whatever. I've never tried to take that information and put it into the minutes because she includes a director's report. So that director's report is part of what we post as part of our meeting minutes. But if we're, talking about, when we were talking about COVID plans or whatever, or signage about with Dennis, it's just kind of hitting the highlights and trying to keep it short and sweet and not making it lengthy. I think one of the good points Linda made is if we say something that's not 100% factual, if we mess up the numbers or put something out there and then it's part of the minutes, then how do you support that? I mean, if it's not factual.
Well,
So,
I think that's why, what you and Doug both talked about is exactly what I was trying to convey, is that we should not get detail oriented.
exactly,
We discussed we discussed, for instance, Cressy Road, we discussed doing the work necessary to find out how much it would cost to rebuild the Cressy Road
Yeah.
for a future warrant. And we don't mention any numbers, we don't say when, when it has to be done.
Exactly.
We discussed
that's
that,
right.
and that's in the minutes. And the department heads got something, drug take back.
Yeah.
That's right. Chief Mulheron mentioned drug take back on such and such a date.
Yeah.
Don't need any more detail.
That's right.
So that's kind of thing exactly that I was trying to convey.
Yeah. And I've always I like bullet points because you can just hammer right down through and see this was discussed. And, looking at the minutes when we first started, discussing this a week ago, I started before Linda sent things out, I started looking at other towns' minutes and looked at Turner's. That was, one of the ones close by that I looked at that wasn't part of what Linda looked at. And, pretty much that's what people are doing, just hitting the high notes and giving the gist of the conversation that it triggers your memory so you know what we talked about last time. And I think that's what we need to strive for, because I think it's far more easy for people to read that and get a feeling of what went on or what was discussed than having something that they go, my God, how long is this? And then put it away and not interested at all. So.
Right, and it's difficult for Doreen or anybody to capture in real time what we might all be talking about. So, for instance, we're discussing Cressy Road, and it's mentioned in the minutes that we had that discussion and that we asked the manager to get some costing estimates for us for the engineering. What we all said is not necessary to be recorded,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because in all fairness to her, she might not accurately get everything that we said because it's happening so fast. So the fact that it was discussed, what the final ask was at the end of the discussion, I think is all kind of thing that we need to capture.
Yeah, and, I like Doreen said, I thought Wayne's were very neat, short, sweet, to the point, status similar, because they were, kind of an outline form and it flows pretty easily, so. That's my 2 cents.
As a recording secretary for
Many boards.
many boards, for the museum trustees, for the Constant Hall trustees, for Buried Extra Wilson watershed. As a teacher, special ed teacher, I had to take the minutes of what they call IEP meetings, individual education plan meetings. So I kind of, and I don't know, I've been asked to continue for some reason. Why, like they want me to be the minute taker for the museum trustees.
Well, that's easy to understand, Doug.
But they're so hard to take because they don't follow an agenda.
Well,
They're jumping all over the place.
many
And
places
you try
don't.
to somehow put them together so they make some sense. It comes and with certain people who are constant all trustees, like the chair, sometimes they'll just Randy Prince was a good chair, but we had a hard time sticking to the topic, I think. And so it was a little confusing to do the minutes there, but with Linda Johnston, and this is public, I guess. She's stick to the agenda. That's easy. It's anyway.
Well, one thing I will bring up is on any board or committee, it's extraordinarily difficult to get a member to do minutes. Most of the time, if you want accurate minutes, you've got to hire someone. So I'm certainly not going to fault anyone who takes minutes for a group. And I'm certainly not going to fault anyone that you have to hire, because they're really working pretty hard to capture that whole meeting agenda in essence and everything. Meetings can be confusing. People don't stick to agendas like you said. You get off on tangents. So my hat's off to anybody who wants to take minutes.
So I, like Doug and Chris, I've been secretary for several organizations and taken minutes for several organizations, and every organization had a little bit different format. Some very well structured, some not as well structured. But every time that was my responsibility, I tried to do it the way that I've talked about tonight. Capture all the motions and votes, discussions, just what the topic was. That if the topic was discussed, if there were suggestions that were discussed that were important, that I might say, these are the options that were discussed. Now, I would never record what actually was said, because I might get something wrong, or just, but these options were discussed. That
With
takes
that
some
being,
pressure off.
oh, go ahead, Douglas. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So you have an idea what's being named after?
You'll see it next time.
Well,
If you don't like it, then.
it's a work in progress. Whenever we make changes to something from how we did do it to the next time, it's always, okay, we like this, we like this. Can we do this? Can we do that? And I think that's what we expect and what we anticipate. And, as we move forward, we'll come up with something that works for us.
And works for Doreen.
Yes, yes.
With all that being said, I think we've all come to a consensus. And I'll move we adjourn.
All those in favor? Oh, we need a second.
I second.
Okay.
I don't know,
You were right.
you were right. I thought sure I was gonna be able to get out of work early today, and then some emergency happened, and I wound up thinking I might not get even home.
Yeah, and